thinking of finding the perfect man. Loving him, trusting him, building your dreams around him, only to be betrayed in your absence for another woman. That's the pain Ayanda Kumalo never saw coming. She gave her all, her heart, her money, her loyalty, while he lived a double life behind her back. What happens when love turns into lies, and sacrifice meets betrayal? This is not just a story of heartbreak. It's a story of strength, karma, and a woman's powerful rise from the ashes. Grab your popcorn, sit tight, and let's dive into this emotional roller coaster of love, deception, downfall, and ultimate redemption. Ayanda Kumalo stood on the balcony of their double-story home in Rudport, sipping her morning rooibos tea. From where she stood, she could see the sunrise painting soft hues over the city skyline. She loved this view. It made her feel like life was good, stable, safe, successful. And why wouldn't it be? She was 32, a senior marketing executive in one of Santon's most respected financial institutions. She'd worked hard to climb the ladder. Late nights, weekend presentations, endless pitches. Her husband, Sibusiso, 35, ran a small but growing construction company. It hadn't always been easy, but they had built a good life together. Or so she believed. Every month, Ayanda deposited her entire salary into their joint account. She trusted Sibusiso with the finances. He had always insisted that he'd manage the money while she focused on her career. That sounded fair, and besides, he always had the right words. "Don't worry, baby," he'd say while buttering his toast. "I've got everything under control. One day, we'll buy a holiday home in Durban." Ayanda smiled whenever he spoke like that. Big dreams, long-term plans, stability. What more could a woman want? Their home looked like a picture of success. Leather couches, a wall-mounted smart TV, tasteful paintings, and framed wedding photos still hanging above the dining table. 8 years into marriage, they had no children yet, but Ayanda remained hopeful. They'd been trying. Maybe soon. But even in her comfort, small things began to feel off. Sibusiso had become unusually secretive with his phone. He started coming home late, blaming site problems and client delays. There were nights he didn't even touch dinner. And when Ayanda suggested a weekend getaway for just the two of them, he quickly shut it down. "Business is tight right now. We need to save," he said, barely looking up from his WhatsApp messages. She didn't argue. Times were tough for everyone. Load shedding, rising petrol prices, and construction delays. It made sense. But then came the moment that changed everything. One ordinary Tuesday, Ayanda received a call at work from the bank. "Good morning, Mrs. Kumalo. We're calling to confirm some large transfers made recently. Over our 450,000 sent to a Ms. Naledi Makati. Were these authorized by you?" The room spun. The call cut through her like a knife. "Excuse me," she asked, her voice trembling. "Who?" When the call ended, Ayanda sat frozen at her desk, heart pounding like a tribal drum. Naledi. Who was Naledi? What transfers? That evening, after Sibusiso claimed he had another late meeting, she waited until he was gone and opened his laptop. For the next 3 hours, Ayanda's perfect life shattered piece by piece. Bank statements, credit card bills, car loan documents, and a second mortgage she never signed. Her stomach turned. Sibusiso had been funneling money out of their account. Jewelry, hotel bookings, expensive dinners, all paid for using the money she earned. And the name Naledi appeared everywhere. In that moment everything became clear. Her trust, her love, her sacrifice, it had all been taken for granted. And the worst part, she had no idea how far the betrayal had gone. Ayanda looked around the house they built together, the photos, the furniture, and whispered to herself with tears streaming down her cheeks. Was any of this even real? Little did she know this was just the beginning. Ayanda didn't sleep that night. She sat in the living room long after midnight, laptop on her lap, eyes red and swollen. The numbers didn't lie. Over our 800,000 had left their joint account over the past 18 months. The transfers, the property purchase, the new vehicle, All led to one name, Naledi Makati. The betrayal felt like a dagger that twisted deeper with every new detail she uncovered. But who was this woman? And how long had she been lurking in the shadows of her marriage? The next morning, Ayanda called in sick to work. She needed answers. She opened Sibusiso's social media accounts. His business pages, WhatsApp backups, even his Gmail, which he often forgot to log out of. What she found confirmed her worst fears. Photos of Naledi. Young, curvy, always dressed in brand names. One selfie showed her sitting in a Mercedes, the same one Ayanda had unknowingly paid for. Another image made her stomach churn. Naledi wrapped in Sibusiso's arms, both smiling in front of a vacation lodge in the Drakensberg. That same weekend, Sibusiso had told Ayanda he was attending a construction expo in Polokwane. The lies were endless. The deception ran deep. Ayanda dug deeper and discovered a property in Pretoria registered under Sibusiso's brother's name, but paid for from their joint account. She remembered the late-night arguments over money, the time Sibusiso claimed the business was suffering while she cut back on groceries, skipped spa days, and used old makeup products to save money. All so he could impress a girl young enough to call her auntie. Desperate for support, Ayanda called her sister Thembika, the only person she could trust. "He's been stealing from me, Thembika. Using my money to fund another woman's lifestyle." Thembika was silent for a moment, then let out a heavy sigh. "I never liked how you gave him full control of your money. But I didn't want to cause problems." That sentence stung. For years, Ayanda believed she was being a good wife. Selfless, committed, trusting. Now she felt foolish. Blindsided. As she broke down on the phone, Thembika said softly, "You're not the one who should be ashamed, Ayanda." "Yes, but you need to take control now. You hear me?" That same afternoon, Ayanda visited Tumelo Makona, her childhood friend turned corporate attorney. She poured out her heart, every transaction, every document, every moment of suspicion. Tumelo shook his head after going through the files. "This isn't just infidelity, Ayanda. This is financial abuse. It's a legal offense. And if you want to fight him, I'll represent you for free." For the first time in days, Ayanda felt the slightest flicker of hope. Not strength yet, not victory, but the faint glow of a woman who had been knocked down, and was starting to rise. But just as she began regaining her footing, humiliation came knocking. A week later, Ayanda attended a friend's wedding in Sandton. It was meant to be a distraction, a night to escape her storm. But fate had other plans. As she walked into the reception, wearing a deep emerald dress and trying her best to smile, she froze. There across the room was Sibusiso. And beside him, wearing a golden dress that left little to the imagination, was Naledi. The whispers started immediately. People exchanged glances. Some guests tried to act natural. But Ayanda felt the heat rush to her face as she locked eyes with Sibusiso, who didn't even flinch. He saw her pain and chose indifference. Naledi smirked. Ayanda turned, left the hall without a word, and cried in her car for 30 minutes. The betrayal had gone from private destruction to public humiliation. But sometimes the lowest point is also the beginning of transformation. That night, Ayanda made a silent vow. "You took everything from me, Sibusiso. But you won't take what's left of me. Not my dignity. Not my future. I will rise, and you will watch." Ayanda couldn't recognize herself anymore. The strong, self-assured woman who once walked confidently into boardrooms now sat in silence on her sister's couch, eyes swollen from crying, heart shattered like glass. Days passed in a blur. The world outside moved on, but inside her, everything stood still. She barely ate. She couldn't sleep. Nights were filled with racing thoughts. The betrayal wasn't just about love. It was about identity, self-worth, dignity. Sibusiso hadn't just broken vows. He had robbed her of everything she built, everything she believed in. Her once spotless credit was now a disaster. Loan defaults, credit card bills, a foreclosure notice on their Rudport home, all stacked like knives against her. Her job was hanging by a thread too. She had missed meetings, forgotten deadlines, and even broke down during a morning presentation. When her boss called her into the office and gently asked, "Ayanda, are you okay?" she could only manage a tearful, "I'm trying." But trying didn't feel like enough anymore. Her sister Thembika held her hand that night. "You need to fight now. Not just for money, but for your name, your life." Ayanda nodded slowly. That night, she opened a fresh document on her laptop. She began cataloging every transaction, every lie she had discovered. Tumalo, her lawyer friend, had given her clear instructions. The more records you gather, the stronger your case. This isn't just a marriage problem, it's legal warfare. So she worked. At night, when tears threatened to swallow her, she worked. By day, she still showed up to the office, even when she wanted to vanish. And in the evening, she took on small freelance marketing gigs, designing logos, writing branding proposals for startups, just to bring in some extra money to stay afloat. Her hands shook. Her spirit trembled. But somewhere deep inside, a fire began to burn. Just when Ayanda thought she had seen the worst, another knife plunged into her back, this time from a place she never expected. One of her colleagues, Lindayo, someone she had confided in during lunch breaks, leaked personal details of Ayanda's situation to others in the office. Whispers circled the workplace. "Did you hear? Her husband left her for some young thing. Apparently she's drowning in debt. Poor woman." Ayanda overheard two co-workers gossiping in the restroom, not knowing she was in the stall behind them. Crushed her. Again. But this time she didn't cry. She walked out, looked one of the women in the eye, and said calmly, "I may be down now, but I'm not staying there." That was the moment something shifted in her. Humiliation would no longer define her. Rising from it would. Then came the final twist that almost broke her again. Ayanda received a message from an unknown number. It was Naledi. "Just wanted you to know, he loves me now. You were just a phase." Ayanda's hands trembled as she read the words. But what hurt more was the image attached. Sibusiso and Naledi together again, this time inside what looked like a baby nursery. She was pregnant. Ayanda felt dizzy. Her stomach turned. Was this the final blow? But the universe had its own sense of irony. A month later, Tumalo told her something interesting. Rumors had begun surfacing that Sibusiso was denying the pregnancy, telling friends he wasn't sure if the baby was even his. Ayanda said nothing. But her heart whispered, even snakes eat themselves eventually. Fueled by every betrayal, every insult, every setback, Ayanda snapped out of survival mode and stepped into fighter mode. She moved back in with Thembika permanently and started building her strategy. Tumalo filed official divorce papers. Ayanda began attending therapy once a week to rebuild her mental strength. She also joined a support group for women who'd survived financial and emotional abuse. In those meetings, she realized, I'm not the only one. I'm not alone. And I'm not broken, just bruised. Every week, her freelance work grew. Slowly, her name began circulating in Santon's small business community. She started rebuilding not just her finances, but her confidence. Ayanda was no longer just reacting. She was now taking back control of the story. And in that quiet, sacred space of healing, she whispered to herself, this is not how my story ends. This is how I rise. Ayanda couldn't recognize herself anymore. The strong, self-assured woman who once walked confidently into boardrooms now sat in silence on her sister's couch, eyes swollen from crying, heart shattered like glass. Days passed in a blur. The world outside moved on, but inside her, everything stood still. She barely ate. She couldn't sleep. Nights were filled with racing thoughts. The betrayal wasn't just about love. It was about identity, self-worth, dignity. Sibusiso hadn't just broken vows. He had robbed her of everything she built, everything she believed in. Her once spotless credit was now a disaster. Loan defaults, credit card bills, a foreclosure notice on their Rudport home, all stacked like knives against her. Her job was hanging by a thread too. She had missed meetings, forgotten deadlines, and even broke down during a morning presentation. When her boss called her into the office and gently asked, "Ayanda, are you okay?" she could only manage a tearful, "I'm trying." But trying didn't feel like enough anymore. Her sister Thembika held her hand that night. "You need to fight now. Not just for money, but for your name, your life." Ayanda nodded slowly. That night, she opened a fresh document on her laptop. She began cataloging every transaction, every lie she had discovered. Tumalo, her lawyer friend, had given her clear instructions. The more records you gather, the stronger your case. This isn't just a marriage problem, it's legal warfare. So she worked. At night, when tears threatened to swallow her, she worked. By day, she still showed up to the office, even when she wanted to vanish. And in the evening, she took on small freelance marketing gigs, designing logos, writing branding proposals for startups, just to bring in some extra money to stay afloat. Her hands shook. Her spirit trembled. But somewhere deep inside, a fire began to burn. Just when Ayanda thought she had seen the worst, another knife plunged into her back, this time from a place she never expected. One of her colleagues, Lindio, someone she had confided in during lunch breaks, leaked personal details of Ayanda's situation to others in the office. Whispers circled the workplace. "Did you hear? Her husband left her for some young thing. Apparently she's drowning in debt. Poor woman." Ayanda overheard two co-workers gossiping in the restroom, not knowing she was in the stall behind them. Crushed her. Again. But this time she didn't cry. She walked out, looked one of the women in the eye, and said calmly, "I may be down now, but I'm not staying there." That was the moment something shifted in her. Humiliation would no longer define her. Rising from it would. Then came the final twist that almost broke her again. Ayanda received a message from an unknown number. It was Naledi. "Just wanted you to know, he loves me now. You were just a phase." Ayanda's hands trembled as she read the words. But what hurt more was the image attached. Sibusiso and Naledi together again, this time inside what looked like a baby nursery. She was pregnant. Ayanda felt dizzy. Her stomach turned. Was this the final blow? But the universe had its own sense of irony. A month later, Tumalo told her something interesting. Rumors had begun surfacing that Sibusiso was denying the pregnancy, telling friends he wasn't sure if the baby was even his. Ayanda said nothing. But her heart whispered, even snakes eat themselves eventually. Fueled by every betrayal, every insult, every setback, Ayanda snapped out of survival mode and stepped into fighter mode. She moved back in with Thembika permanently and started building her strategy. Tumalo filed official divorce papers. Ayanda began attending therapy once a week to rebuild her mental strength. She also joined a support group for women who'd survived financial and emotional abuse. In those meetings, she realized, I'm not the only one. I'm not alone. And I'm not broken, just bruised. Every week, her freelance work grew. Slowly, her name began circulating in Santon's small business community. She started rebuilding not just her finances, but her confidence. Ayanda was no longer just reacting. She was now taking back control of the story. And in that quiet, sacred space of healing, she whispered to herself, "This is not how my story ends. This is how I rise." Ayanda walked into the Johannesburg family court with her head held high. Not because she wasn't afraid, but because she refused to be ashamed anymore. She was officially filing for divorce. Sibusiso, dressed in a flashy blazer and dark shades, sat across the room beside his attorney, oozing arrogance. He didn't even look at her. But Ayanda noticed the subtle changes. The expensive watch was missing. He looked thinner, like a man slowly unraveling. Tumalo, calm and composed beside her, whispered, "He's about to find out that this won't go the way he thinks." The case was complicated. Sibusiso had already started claiming half of everything, including Ayanda's pension, her car, and even dared to request spousal support. The audacity cut deep. But Ayanda had come prepared. With Tumalo's guidance, she presented every bank statement, loan document, and fraudulent transaction. She had proof of the money he stole, the fake property registrations, and even screenshots of Sibusiso transferring money to Naledi while claiming the business was in crisis. The judge raised an eyebrow and said, "This is not a typical divorce. This is financial exploitation." Ayanda didn't want revenge. She wanted justice. Outside of court, karma was already tightening its grip on Sibusiso. His construction company, once thriving, had fallen into disarray. Several clients had come forward with complaints of poor workmanship. Lawsuits were piling up. His license was under review. His workers hadn't been paid in weeks. Worse still, Naledi's golden glow was beginning to fade. With money drying up, she started complaining. No more gifts, no more vacations, no more spontaneous shopping sprees. She was used to being pampered, not struggling. Tension mounted. Ayanda didn't gloat. In fact, she rarely spoke of him outside legal meetings. But one day, Thembika handed her a screenshot of a WhatsApp message someone had shared anonymously. It was Naledi, ranting to a mutual friend. "He's not the guy I thought he was. He's broke. He's bitter. He's blaming me." Anda said nothing. She simply smiled. One evening, Tumalo called Ayanda with urgency in his voice. "We found something." It turned out that Sibusiso had secretly funneled money into a hidden investment account, registered under a shell company he opened with his cousin's ID. He thought no one would find it. But Ayanda's consistent records, plus a whistleblower from his business, led Tumalo right to it. "This gives us leverage," Tumalo said. "And it proves intent to deceive the court." This discovery changed the case. When Sibusiso found out that the account had been revealed, he lashed out in court, calling Ayanda a manipulator and liar. But the judge shut him down. "Mr. Kumalo, this court sees through games. The evidence is clear. You abused your wife's trust and assets." The room fell silent. Ayanda held back tears, not from sadness but relief. Amidst the storm, something beautiful began to blossom. Ayanda's freelance marketing work started growing beyond her expectations. Local businesses reached out for branding consultations. One of her online logo designs went viral. She began earning enough to pay off debts left by Sibusiso. She even started hosting online workshops for women, teaching them how to protect their finances, how to build side incomes, and how to spot financial abuse. Each session ended with her signature line, "You are not helpless. You are just healing." Her strength became her light. One evening after a session, Ayanda stood by her window looking over Melville's glowing rooftops and whispered, "I'm not just surviving. I'm transforming." In February 2020, the court delivered its final judgment. Ayanda was granted full ownership of their Rudport home, R300,000 in damages for financial abuse, 70% of Sibusiso's remaining assets, including the hidden investment account, coverage of all her legal fees. Sibusiso stood motionless, stunned. Ayanda looked at him for the last time and said, "I didn't come here to destroy you. I came to rebuild myself." The courtroom erupted in quiet gasps. As she walked out into the sunlight, she felt 10 years lighter. Divorce didn't break her. It delivered her. In the weeks following the court's final ruling, Ayanda finally allowed herself to breathe. For the first time in over a year, she wasn't fighting anymore. The legal documents were signed. The house was officially hers. The debts were finally being cleared off one by one. The war was over. But the battle inside her heart, that was still ongoing. There were nights she would wake up in a cold sweat, reliving the betrayal. Days she would suddenly stop mid-task and wonder, how did I allow myself to lose so much of me? Healing wasn't a straight path. It was layered, raw, and often painful. But Ayanda didn't run from it anymore. She faced it. She journaled. She cried. She meditated. And every week, she returned to therapy, sitting across from a kind woman named Zinal who reminded her, "You're not starting over. You're starting with wisdom." And that made all the difference. The Rudport house no longer felt haunted. Ayanda took her time reshaping it, not just redecorating but reclaiming every room. She took down old wedding pictures and painted over the dull walls with bold colors. The dining table that once held bank statements and betrayal was replaced with a sleek marble set where she now hosted friends for dinner. She turned what was once their shared bedroom into her sanctuary. Candles, soft jazz music, new sheets, everything chosen intentionally. One Saturday morning, Thembika walked in and gasped, "Wow, sis! This house looks nothing like it did before." Ayanda smiled. "Because it finally feels like mine." The home wasn't just a building now. It was a statement, proof that a woman could lose everything and still rebuild something even more beautiful. With her marketing business now stable, Ayanda decided it was time to do more, to give back. She officially launched a new initiative called Women Reclaiming Wealth. It started as a support group for women who had experienced financial abuse. Then it became something greater. Workshops, online classes, speaking gigs at women's conferences, even a podcast that quickly gained traction. Each episode shared real stories of women who were rebuilding after betrayal. Stories like hers. Sponsors reached out. Collaborations followed. Within months, Ayanda's name became synonymous with resilience in South Africa's women in business space. She wasn't just rising. She was pulling others up with her. One evening, Ayanda returned home from hosting a speaking event in Soweto. As she unlocked her gate, she noticed a man sitting on the front steps. It was Sibusiso. He looked nothing like the man she once married. His blazer was wrinkled, shoes dusty, face tired. He stood up awkwardly, eyes filled with shame. "Ayanda, please. Messed up. I lost everything. The business. Naledi. The flat. Everything's gone." She didn't speak. "I'm not asking for much. Just help me get back on my feet." There was a long silence. Ayanda finally replied, "I forgive you, but I won't carry you. The same way I had to build myself from ashes. You must do the same. That's your path, not mine." She turned, unlocked the door and walked inside, leaving him outside with his consequences. By 2022, Ayanda had blossomed into someone even she couldn't have imagined. She now lived in a beautiful townhouse in Melville, surrounded by books, plants, art, and peace. Her business was thriving. She traveled often, speaking to young professionals and mentoring abused women. And yes, she started dating again. His name was Chipo, an engineer with a calm spirit and kind eyes. He wasn't flashy or overly charming, but he was consistent, honest. He asked questions. He listened. Most importantly, he respected her journey. One night as they sat beneath the stars, he looked at her and said, "You've been through the fire, but you wear your scars like gold." Ayanda smiled. "Because I didn't just survive it. I grew through it." And finally she believed it. Sibusiso Kumalo stared at his reflection in the cracked mirror of a tiny one-room flat in Soweto. Gone were the designer clothes, the fancy cologne, the branded watch he once used to flash at business meetings, and at side chicks. All that remained was the man behind the illusion. Alone, broke, forgotten. He now worked as a general laborer for a small construction crew. The same types of jobs he once arrogantly delegated to others, he now did for survival. Mixing cement, pushing wheelbarrows, cleaning sites, tasks that paid just enough to keep his electricity on. Every morning, he replayed his choices. The lies, the double life, the betrayal of the one woman who had truly loved him. But perhaps the cruelest part of it all, no one felt sorry for him. His family had distanced themselves after the court case. His so-called friends had stopped answering his calls. And Naledi, the woman he lost everything for, had long since disappeared. After Sibusiso lost his assets, Naledi's attitude shifted overnight. The apartment he had rented for her in Hatfield, the car he bought her, repossessed, the shopping sprees, weekends away, champagne brunches, all a memory. At first she stuck around, hoping it was temporary. But when creditors started calling and Sibusiso could barely afford food, she bounced. No long goodbye. No loyalty. One day, he came home from work to find the flat half empty. She'd taken her clothes, her perfumes, and the new phone he had bought her. The only thing she left was a note on the kitchen counter. This isn't the life I signed up for. I hope you find peace. The final twist. He later found out she was now dating one of his former business partners, the same man who once warned him not to destroy his marriage. Sibusiso's downfall became the talk of old circles. Former clients gossiped. Did you hear about Kumalo? Man's washing bricks now. Old friends mocked. He left a diamond for a plastic toy. But what hurt most was hearing how Ayanda was thriving. One afternoon while waiting for a taxi, Sibusiso overheard a group of women at the rank talking about a recent women's conference. That lady Ayanda Kumalo, what a powerful story. She's teaching women how to own their money now. Real queen moves. His throat tightened. The same woman he had humiliated, discarded, and mocked, now had the world listening to her story, while he struggled to buy electricity tokens. That night, for the first time in years, he cried. With nowhere left to turn, Sibusiso did something he never imagined he would. He returned to Ayanda's doorstep. She opened the door cautiously. Her face was calm but unreadable. He looked at her, glowing, graceful, successful, and suddenly felt 10 inches tall. Ayanda, I don't deserve to ask you for anything. But I've lost everything. I need help, please. Just something small to start over. There was a long silence. She stepped outside, folded her arms, and looked him in the eyes. I forgave you a long time ago, Sibusiso. Not for you. For me. But I won't enable you. You see this peace I've built. I bled for it. Cried for it. I fought for it. And I won't trade it to save someone who once threw me away. He nodded slowly. I understand. And just like that, he walked away. No curses. No begging. Just silence and shame. Ayanda stood at her living room window, watching him disappear down the street. No pain. No bitterness. Just closure. She turned around, walked back to her office space, and opened her laptop. Another email awaited. This time, a request to speak at an international summit on women in business. She accepted with a smile. Because the girl who once believed her life was over was now writing new chapters with power, purpose, and poise. And the man who once thought he was king. He had fallen, not because Ayanda pushed him, but because he built his throne on lies. Ayanda sat in her quiet office, the early morning sun casting a soft glow across her desk. In front of her were stacks of thank you letters, emails, and testimonials from women across the country. Some were from entrepreneurs who had launched their first businesses. Others were from single mothers who had escaped abusive marriages. All of them carried the same message. Because of your story, I found the strength to rewrite mine. Her organization, Women Reclaiming Wealth, had now expanded across Gauteng, KwaZulu-Natal, and the Western Cape. She had hosted seminars in township halls, university auditoriums, even virtual sessions with African women living abroad. She wasn't just sharing her pain anymore. She was leading a movement. And the woman who once questioned her worth now walked into every room with presence, purpose, and peace. Therapy had changed her life. It wasn't just a place to vent. It was a mirror that showed her how much she'd grown. She no longer flinched at Sibusiso's name. She no longer blamed herself for his betrayal. She understood now that his actions spoke of his own emptiness, not her inadequacy. Even her conversations with Thembeka had evolved. No longer about survival but strategy. You're building something bigger than just a business, Ayanda, Thembeka told her one evening over wine. You're building a legacy. Ayanda nodded. She felt it too. Each scar had become a lesson. Each tear had become a seed. And now, she was blooming in ways she never imagined. Chipo entered her life gently, without demand, without drama. He never tried to fix her. He simply stood beside her. He asked about her dreams, not her past. He listened without interruption. He showed up, Not with grand gestures but with consistent effort. One evening, as they sat on her balcony sipping hot cocoa, he looked at her and said, "You don't need anyone to complete you, Ayanda. But I'd be honored to walk beside you, as you keep becoming more of who you already are." Her heart fluttered, not in the nervous, uncertain way it once had, but with warmth and clarity. This wasn't infatuation. This was partnership. At a women's empowerment gala held in Johannesburg, Ayanda was awarded the Trailblazer in Finance and Advocacy Award. As she walked onto the stage, applause thundered across the room. Some in the crowd had followed her journey for years. Others had only recently discovered her story. But all of them knew what she represented: resilience, growth, transformation. When she stood at the podium, she didn't speak about Sibusiso. She didn't mention betrayal. Instead, she said, "This award doesn't honor what I lost. It honors what I chose to rise into. Thank you for seeing me. But more importantly, thank you for becoming with me." The room stood in ovation. Not because of her pain, but because of the power she had built from it. That night, Ayanda wrote herself a letter. "Dear me, you thought it would destroy you, the betrayal, the debt, the heartbreak. But look at you. You turned brokenness into brilliance. You chose healing over hatred. You chose purpose over pity. You didn't just survive. You became." She sealed the letter and tucked it into a drawer. It wasn't meant for anyone else to read. It was a reminder that becoming whole isn't about returning to who you once were. It's about evolving into someone stronger than you ever imagined. It was a cloudy Tuesday when Sibusiso found himself outside a local spaza shop in Soweto, asking to work for food. His once booming construction company had been deregistered. His family had grown tired of his pity stories. The cousin who helped him hide assets had ghosted him after pocketing the last of the stolen funds. His phone barely rang anymore except for debt collectors. But that day, standing under a leaking zinc roof with a torn envelope of unpaid bills in his hand, a car pulled up beside him. A luxury SUV. Bleak, polished, commanding. Ayanda hadn't planned to see him. She had just wrapped a business pitch meeting nearby and was heading to the university to speak on financial independence for young women. When she saw him, dusty, defeated, deflated, she paused. For a moment time stood still. Sibusiso couldn't meet her gaze. His lips trembled as he tried to speak. "Anda, I didn't think." She raised a hand gently. "You don't need to explain. Your choices already spoke." There was no anger in her voice. Just calm, the kind of peace that comes from healing that no longer needs revenge. "Whatever you're going through, I hope you learn from it. Not for me. For yourself." And then she drove off, music playing, peace radiating. He watched her disappear down the road, this time knowing he had truly lost a queen. Later that night, Sibusiso sat in the dim glow of his room, staring at a bowl of pap and beans. He thought of all the dinners Ayanda had cooked when he came home late. He thought of the nights she stayed up budgeting for their future while he texted other women. He thought of the moment she said, "I do," and the years he chose not to. And most haunting of all, he thought of how she had turned her pain into power, while he had turned his power into poverty. Karma hadn't just punished him. It had educated him. For Ayanda, life was in full bloom. She had opened her first community women's hub in Johannesburg, a resource center that provided mentorship, financial planning, and business training for women escaping toxic relationships. Sponsors backed her. Government grants supported her vision. She wasn't just a brand now. She was a blueprint. The world recognized her resilience. But her greatest reward wasn't fame or finances. It was standing in front of a room full of women and saying, "Your past may have tried to bury you, but your future is still growing." That was the moment she realized she hadn't just won. She had planted seeds that would keep blooming long after her own story ended. Years later, Ayanda would look back and remember it all. The betrayal, the courtrooms, the heartbreak. But she'd also remember the strength, the rise, the becoming. And she'd smile. Because in the end, karma didn't need thunder or lightning to strike. It simply waited patiently. Until the false king fell on his own sword. And the real queen rose to her rightful throne. Not with vengeance, but with vision.